Hello, my name is Megan Arns, and I am the Director of Percussion Studies at the University of Missouri School of Music. Today I will be playing the snare, keyboard, timpani, and multi-percussion etudes from the general percussion option for the 2021-2022 Missouri All-State Band Audition. At the end of each excerpt, I'm going to provide some helpful tips for your practice sessions. All right, for the multi-percussion etude, we have a variety of instruments here. I recommend setting them up in the order that you play them, so that's just one less thing to think about. So I've got my bass drum on the left side, and then triangle, tambourine, crash cymbals, and suspended cymbal. You could put your crash cymbals into a cradle if you want. I just have one big table that fits everything. I have another tray for all my mallets that I decided to put here sort of in the middle left side of everything. So I position things where they're the easiest to get, but also they're in an order that I can easily remember them. So for the first instrument, the bass drum, you need two mallets because you've got the rolls. You can either approach this two mallet roll using traditional grip in your left hand, so it's a little more comfortable if you're here in match grip, your elbows out. So that's fine too if you're comfortable with this, but when you flip it over, it's just a little bit more comfortable position. As we talked about playing zones on other drums, if you hit in the center, you're going to have a little bit more of a dead spot. And if you hit more closer to the edge, but not all the way to the edge, this is going to be your sweet spot or the most resonant spot. So somewhere sort of halfway in between the center and the edge here is the sweet spot on the bass drum. So for these big rolls, I want to have a nice big hit, and then you can actually wait just a little bit before you sneak in with the roll because there is so much resonance already. So like this. All right. When you get to the staccato strokes with the rests after them, this is tricky because we could add a towel or some kind of muffling to the drum, but so much of this excerpt is resonant. So I think it makes more sense to have the drum just open and free to resonate as much as it can. And then we can use our hand sort of like we did on timpani. It's a little tricky here, but if you can place your hand quietly and play in the center of the drum where there's less resonance, we can get a really soft and pretty muted dead stroke there. And then when you go back to the quarter notes after that, go back to your resonant spot. Okay, and then we have one last loud roll, and then at the very end, I would recommend bringing your other hand around to the other side of the bass drum to make sure that both heads are muted. All right, so you can see that whole thing played when I play the whole piece. Go back and watch that, all those techniques implemented. Then we move to the triangle. In all of these transitions, I like to make sure I really finish what I'm doing before I move on to the next thing. So that mute, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I really make sure I'm muted, and then I move on. There is just enough time in these, and I feel like each of the sort of transition bars, there's enough time to like transition to an instrument, and then there's enough time to pick it up and think about the next tempo or instrument that you're at. So, for example, you could play bass drum, mute, and then the next bar would be transitioning to the triangle, sort of picking it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, getting into playing position, and then we start playing. So when we're in the triangle, we like to roll in the corner and not the corner that's open. So the corner that's open should be on your left side, and then you should roll here. That's going to get you the most consistent roll sound. And you can get a great fortissimo roll there, and you can also get a great pianissimo roll there. And pianissimo. That one's harder. But with practice, you'll be able to get a nice consistent roll at both of those dynamic levels. When you're not rolling and just hitting single notes, I would recommend playing here on the bottom side of the triangle with your mallet or your triangle beater at like a 45-degree angle. It's going to get you a little bit more color. This is more of a single tone, a little bit more color here. So I want to play that spot. In that way, okay? And every triangle is completely different. So really listen to the sound that your triangle is making and adjust to that. But those are some basic techniques that should be able to get you started with your triangle. This is an Alan Abel triangle. I chose kind of a smaller one so I could really get those pianissimo rolls in. But I would recommend a medium-sized triangle, maybe a little bit on the small side. But a giant triangle, it's going to be hard to get the pianissimo sound on it. So that's triangle. And then looking at the transition here, it's very similar to the bass drum in that we're playing mute on beat 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then put the triangle down as softly as you can without making any noise and pick up the tambourine. So this is where it's very convenient for them to be right next to each other. Play, 2, mute, down, move. So I move as quickly as I can, but don't move like you're knocking things over, right? So it's like you're moving very quickly, but very swiftly. So once you pick up the tambourine, be very careful because the jingles can make noise. I like to pick this up in a way that I'm not turning the tambourine at all, so it's not making any noise. But the regular playing position for tambourine is actually at a 45-degree angle so that you can get jingle sound. The jingles are able to like resonate. So what I would do is you've got this, 1, 2, 3, move it as soon as you start playing it. 1, 2, 3. And for your normal playing position for your fingers, you can kind of make a mallet with your fingers like this. So I wouldn't just use one finger for this. I would actually scrunch all 5 of your fingers together and sort of make a mallet. And you want to play on the drum actually on the tambourine in a similar spot to the bass drum, but right here. All right. And for the shake roll, you want to get the shake roll started by striking the tambourine, striking it into a position that's perpendicular to the ground, because now the jingles are free to resonate completely. They're not touching the shell as much as they would at the 45. So you get more of a crisp articulation sound here at 45, and you get a smoother jingle sound here. All right, so you're going to do a shake roll for 3 beats there, come back out of it, 1, 2, 3, back to 45, articulated. And as you decrescendo in this passage, I would have some kind of maybe a chair. What I have is the base of a short snare drum stand. You could put a little block or whatever. And then I'm using my knee to take out some of the resonance of the tambourine. So as I land there at pianissimo, it's softer because I'm sort of muting it with my knee. And then for the thumb rolls, I play them on my knee. This is not absolutely necessary. You can just come down, but it's going to be a little bit wetter sounding. If you put it on your knee, it's going to be a little softer, a little bit drier, which is what I'm going for. So for the thumb roll, you could do a thumb roll or a finger roll. I really like to roll with my middle finger supported by my thumb, like that. I like that, but you can also totally do it with your thumb as well. And to stop the sound, you can either stop your finger, or you can also bring the palm of your hand down. And this is pianissimo, so it has to be pretty gentle. Another thing you could do is just use your other finger. So it's kind of whatever you're comfortable with. And you can try out these different techniques and kind of see what works for you. So then for that last sforzando note, I would actually use your whole fist so that it's a different sound than all the other sounds that have been made so far. And to sort of break the amount of force that you're putting into the tambourine, I like to move the tambourine down a little bit so your tamborine's moving with your hand. That way you will also ensure that your fist won't go through the tambourine. So, and I would go down, not all the way down, but first of all, you might hit the table, but second of all, we need to make a quick transition to the crash cymbals, right? So I would do something like this. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, we're in 3/4 still. So does that make sense? And so then just quickly moving, putting the tambourine down as gently as you can, not to make any jingle sound. And again, moving as swiftly as you can to the crash cymbals. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we switch meters here. So I would try to get to the crash cymbals by the 4th bar of rest here, so you can really make sure you're set up. So for speaking of setup for the crash cymbals, you might have experienced something called air pockets when you've played crash cymbals before, especially when you were a beginner on crash cymbals. And that happens when the two crash cymbals come directly together. So to avoid that, what we want to do is have 2 points of contact. We want to have the crash cymbals slightly offset from each other and 2 points of contact. You can set this up in multiple ways. What I'm going to show you here is this angle. So the points of contact will be 1, and in real time, it sounds like this. Right? So we're not getting any air pockets there. We don't hear the flam, but we hear a blossom of the sound. Now, you have forte crashes, and you have piano crashes, and everything in between. You do have fortissimo also at the end. So you might choose a cymbal that's sort of a medium weight and either 17 or 18 inches in diameter. I have 18-inch medium light cymbals here. So if I could just play the soft crashes alone, I would use a smaller cymbal like 16 inches. But it is possible to play the soft stuff with these bigger cymbals. Have to be very delicate and very precise. It takes a lot of practice. So I recommend practicing crash cymbals for like 5 or 10 minutes at a time because they do get heavy and your ears can get fatigued. So this is a great thing to practice like right before band class starts, or if you have like 5 minutes on your way out of school, go in and just practice this excerpt for 5 minutes. And if you do that every day or every other day, you're going to get really comfortable with crash cymbals, which is essential for this excerpt because you're moving so quickly from tambourine to crash cymbals, and you've only got a few bars to really showcase all of your great crash cymbal sounds. So then we move over to the suspended cymbal, and for this, it asks us to use hard sticks at first. You could technically do this with 1 stick. I've found that using 2 sticks helps with 2 things. 1, it allows you to get from the edge of the cymbal to the bell of the cymbal quicker. So it asks you to play on the edge and then out to the dome, and that only happens in 1 beat. So you can do it. It's totally fine. It's possible. But also to really just kind of separate the two, and you've got two hands available to you. So then I would play one with my right hand and the other with my left hand. And I can really ensure the correct positioning for that. And then as we crescendo towards the end there, that very last hit, I think sounds better if you go out to the shaft of the stick and the edge of the cymbal and use both. And then you're gonna get a really resonant sound from the cymbal. So again, you can totally do it with one stick, but if you wanna do it with two, that might be an advantage. Okay. And then when we move to the mallets, the most important thing to remember here is the placement of your mallets. I don't tend to, some people will strike that to get it starting to resonate. I like to just start it right where it is so we don't hear any sound before. So I start at the very, very, very edge of the cymbal, as far on the edge as I can. And not, if you're looking at the cymbal like a clock facing you, I would go about 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, okay? So not right across, all the way across from each other, but just in a little bit. And I would increase the roll speed as you increase the dynamic of the roll. So moving from a slow roll speed to a quicker one. That'll get you a really nice blossom. All cymbals are different. That's one of the coolest things about cymbals is that they're all unique, even if they're made to be an 18-inch suspended Constantinople cymbal. They're going to sound different. And so you just have to use your ears to, and the feel of the cymbal to make sure that you've got this really steady crescendo. So I hope these tips were helpful. The multi-percussion etude can often be very tricky because you've got a big setup. They're very short, little excerpts on each instrument, and you have to move very quickly between the instruments. So the final word of advice I would give you on this is to practice with a metronome, because when you're making the transitions, one of the most common mistakes is to lose track of time in there or to move your time around in there. So I would recommend practicing with a metronome on, and then practicing, for example, like quarter note at 80, and then put your metronome on 40. So you're practicing with the half notes, and you could even go down to 20, 1 click per bar, so that you're responsible for more time. And then eventually you sort of wean yourself off the metronome. And with all of the excerpts, I would recommend recording yourself regularly, both audio and video. You can learn a lot and give yourself a lot of lessons just by listening and watching yourself play. That's often a different perspective than being right over the instruments and in the moment of playing them. So good luck practicing this multi-percussion etude and the rest of the etudes for the All-State Audition. Thank you. If you would like more information about the University of Missouri School of Music or about the Percussion Studio, check out our website in the description below. You can find our Percussion Studio's social media channels by searching for Mizzou Percussion on Instagram and Facebook, and view past performances on the University of Missouri School of Music YouTube channel.